The MISC Prospector is the most famous and possibly most tortured project to come out of MISC's high industrial infamous Project Cold Boot, an engineering team organized to develop additional revenue streams from existing MISC assets using limited resources. Development of the Prospector began in 2910 as an outgrowth of a review of the Freelancer Light Transport project. Having already seen modifying the base Freelancer for both survey and fire suppression missions, MISC was keen to study even more unlikely uses for the chassis. To that end, MISC's management reluctantly agreed to write off 9 freelancers, which were transferred to the Cold Boot team. 3 were complete and space tested, while the others were left in various stages of construction and shipped alongside their intended components. The Cold Boot team began by spitballing potential roles for a purpose built freelancer variant, which ranged from ordinary combat support drones to fire suppression spacecraft. From nearly 300 rough concepts, the team voted to divide into 3 design groups to pursue more advanced physical developments of the top 3 options. The first was a business oriented design, dubbed the FreeMinder, which was to be a secure data relay brain ship. The second project opted to angle for a military contract with an armored space to ground reconnaissance vehicle called the Observer. The third, and considered the most unlikely to go forward, was to be a dedicated mining ship, nicknamed simply the Miner. The mining ship was the least likely to go forward for a very simple reason. In 2910, there were very few small mining ships. This was not for a lack of technology, but rather both terrestrial and asteroid mining were simply considered to be large scale propositions, which could only be made profitable when funded by major corporations. In a world where 400-meter mining platforms could strip small asteroids in a matter of hours, there was simply no thought that an individual operator would ever pursue mining. MISC was essentially co opting the Robert Space Industries common man approach to ship sales with a ship that had no proven audience. By 2914, the first 2 conversion attempts had petered out entirely. The Freeminder team proved unable to produce an effective prototype, with the Freelancer's internal space unsuited to shielding the number of systems blades needed for the project. The Observer concept had proven spaceworthy in simulations, and a great deal of work had been done to construct the alternative transparent nose cone for the physical build when word that the rumored ground reconnaissance contract had been withdrawn due to shifting military budgets. The incomplete prototype remained on display at MISC's Los Arenas laboratory for years and was eventually scrapped. Although the miner had proceeded to a physical prototype stage, its situation seemed equally dire. The first prototype, retroactively designed Prospector Proof of Concept Demonstrator A1, was unpleasant and ungainly beast. Its designation that just did not set the team right. The team found themselves unable to budget for custom manufactured mining equipment and was instead forced to adopt an off the shelf solution, the smallest size of a Dalen Crun's laser head emitter, a component roughly the size of a freelancer's entire cockpit. Rather than being integrated into the design, the emitter was nano welded tandem to the cockpit and attached via 4 metal booms. This created an unwieldy spacecraft without the aerodynamics necessary to function predictably in an atmosphere. Initial tests were conducted via carrier spacecraft, with the prototype miner being dropped into space close to asteroid targets. What this A1 technology demonstrator lacked in looks or handling, it made up for in functionality. Over the course of 26 flights conducted by MISC test pilots, the A1 racked up success in a number of areas considered necessary for the program to continue. These flights proved the Freelancer's stock drive could power a mining apparatus, and that the hull could be modified to load ore while other materials were also being loaded. And while in flight, that, with some practice, a trained pilot could very effectively conduct more delicate, high value mining operations using the ship's thrusters. The prototype program continued, with four of the Freelancer chassis ultimately being converted into increasingly advanced demonstrators, designated A 2, A 3, and B 1. By the time of the final demonstrator, B1, space trials, the mining attachment had instead been integrated into a large sheath astride the underside of the cockpit. The result was a mechanism that the pilot could effectively maneuver, giving him the ability to make the kind of delicate mining maneuvers for which larger ships had to deploy specialized surface craft. The management at MISC HI was elated at the prospect of joining the ranks of spacecraft manufacturers producing lucrative mining ships and saw the potential for the ship to create a new market for independent mining crews, many of whom would lease these ships at extremely positive corporate rates of return. The board was ultimately so convinced that they removed the effort from Cold Boot entirely, funding the project and assigning a team of top engineers to develop it into distinct design rather than a freelancer conversion. Over the next 8 years, MISC HI internal teams worked together on two projects. The prime design team focused on developing a unique freelancer inspired spacecraft hull that, while using many of off the shelf parts, would be constructed ground up and organized to best support how they envisioned small scale mining would be most effective. Meanwhile, a handsomely funded research and development team focused on the biggest technological hurdle of the project, miniaturizing a mining array to the point that it could be stored within a small ship's fuselage while still giving it an effective energy output. To meet this task, MISC licensed Dalen Crun's design and relentlessly cut down and miniaturized components in a painstaking multi year process. The ship, now named the Prospector, began proper space trials in 2923 after an extended time in jump tunnel simulations. Live testing went extremely well, with only limited teething difficulties resulting from a late in the process software update. The base ship was ready for flight some 6 months before the first version of the drill was completed. So the initial flight tests focused on handling and were flown with only a weighted simulation. Late in the year, the first mining assembly came off the line and delighted thousands of aerospace engineers by slotting into place aboard the Prospector's hull and immediately humming to life. MISC unveiled the Prospector to the galaxy in what it called a special preview showing at the 2924 Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. The crowd rushed with reviewers praising the design, but strongly and often cruelly criticizing the existence of the ship in the first place. No one, went the refrain, would ever need such a specialized spacecraft. As a result, there was almost no interest from buyers at the show, and pre orders for the next Freelancer immediately outshone the Prospector. Although MISC's management opted to continue the expensive planned 2925 model year rollout for the commercial model, many employees privately expressed doubts because of the media's reaction. Where Robert Space Industries had given carte blanche to sell the dream with every new design, it seemed no one was willing to think that MISC could do the same thing. Sadly, for MISC's stock price, the media reaction was pathetic. Sales of the Prospector hit rock bottom shortly after launch and stayed there for 2 full years. Then came Chessex Lode, a massive discovery of previously ignored raw materials on Ferron 2. News reports around the Empire reported of the lode's discovery, the most valuable of the year, which had made using precision instruments deep in a canyon of a planet that much more valuable. These areas were effectively ignored for years until now. Making the story all the more appealing was the fact that it was not Shubin and Esteller or another large mining outfit with the new mineral claim. Instead, it was Klo Raznik, owner and operator of one of the first 2925 MISC prospectors off the assembly line. She had made the legal purchase of several hundred parcels of former military ground made for testing, in the hopes of salvaging expended shells and claiming these small bounties on radioactive debris collection. In the process of surveying her lots, she discovered a deep chasm into which she navigated her prospector. And the rest was history, with Raznik made an overnight sensation, claiming the empire and impressing trillions with her graceful entrance into the world of excess riches. Within days of the discovery, prospector sales shot through the roof as people rushed to try their hands at this new career. Just as the Cold Boot team once predicted, the prospector had given rise to a new class of miner, and now their work had equipped those independent miners to take on the galaxy. Since 2925, MISC has made several iterative updates to the basic prospector, with two models, 2929 and in 2983, being considered the most significant. The 2947 model is planned to incorporate a completely reworked mining array and a new system for ore storage, which is significantly more efficient than the original. This concludes our coverage of the history of the prospector. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Thank you to my long-term subscribers. I make these as much for you as I do for myself. This was from Jump Point 6.06. Thank you to the CIG lore team for putting this together. This is an older article, but it is extremely relevant with all the mining changes and the new cargo iterations that we're having. The cargo refactor, the cargo new containers, and if rumors to be believed, there is going to be a massive assortment of containers that are going to be coming to the game, both in mining and in general cargo usages in many SU sizes. What they're alluding to at the end of this article is by far the more interesting part. And kind of, when I read this, I read every one of these. I don't know why. I don't know why. But the 2947 model they were alluding to was the original prospector we know of in the game and in the persistent universe. And the way that's set up, if you look at the sides of the prospector, there's saddlebags that are able to be jettisoned and then be scooped via ship tractor beams and then collected. And eventually, if you don't want to take via cargo ship the raw ore all the way back to a refinery on an outpost, etc., basically you can, on a station, just to be clear, you can actually refine that goods on site with the Galaxy, with the refinement module, with the Odyssey on a smaller scale, which is well suited for a prospector, although we're still waiting to see if it can take a whole prospector's load or if it can do two loads from two prospectors, etc. But it is interesting that there's more and more ships coming online that are doing the refinery side of things. But what good is a refinery ship unless it can interact with mining ships? And in order for the mining technology to work correctly, we need to really iron down what a small personal vehicle, and then small, medium, and large, ideally ship, looks like, and that includes subsystems for the mining arrays. That includes more robust assortment of things to mine and values being calculated correctly for risk versus reward, and also the other two sides of the coin. Or storage, where it can be jettisoned off of ships that are too small to carry a whole bunch of it, like on the Prospector, and refining, where player-owned ships can then refine the material, especially in far-flung places. And all of this is going to be absolutely critical for places like Pyro. It doesn't matter if the ore is worth its weight beyond gold, beyond multiple ordinances of gold, etc., if you can't move it effectively. By having players be able to coordinate where one player can basically mine the stuff, the other player can then refine it, and then you can move the much smaller material that is now refined, and obviously you're still taking a massive risk, but it's just a little more practical. Suddenly players can work together, and that's one of the encouragements across the board that we've seen. CIG, Chris Roberts' vision of it, having these multi-crew ships and having players work together as a group to be able to succeed, particularly with the mole. It was one of the earliest iterations of that we saw, where that was highly pushed and highly encouraged to have this group play for mining. Um, we may see more practicalness in a Prospector and an Odyssey working together. Um, it just occurred to me that I'm saying the word Odyssey twice, and I am way too deep into this. So we are going to fix that right now. For those who are surprised by me being very honest in this, I've always found that in my lore videos, I tend to bat for the fences at the end. I tend to have some talk, have some fun. This is like an after hours to me. It's kind of relaxed. It's kind of a little different. So I will admit right now that when I kept saying Odyssey, I was thinking of the small refining vessel that is not out yet, that is still a concept. And I am currently going through the wiki, flipping through it. Shout out to StarCitizen.tools. Your folks are wonderful to find what I'm talking about. And for the record, normally, The Expanse is what I'm talking about. So normally, in one of my normal videos, a little peek behind the curtain here, I would stop the video. I would go back. I would rip whole sections of the commentary out. I would edit it back again, revoice it, try to have the same vibe. In some cases, it might be a drier or a wetter take. So how dry the mouth is, and the exact distance from the microphone. There's a lot of little nuances to this type of thing, and I'm still not a pro at it. Some people can kind of just snap into it and go. I am not one of those people. It takes me a lot of work to do that type of stuff. And I enjoy long form storytelling in general and having a conversation and having a nice discussion. So yeah, so the Expanse is the ship I was referring to, the single seat refinery ship that's also manufactured by MISC. So it should have a nice symbiotic relationship with prospectors. And I think they've been deliberately difficult about those tiny little refineries on board, about how much they can and can't do. It does note that it has 8 slots for 64 SCU of cargo pods, and it has integrated tractor beams. I think that them communicating this to me in the lore by putting up a Prospector article that has all these little details in it, and especially about the everyman and the focus on the small ship, etc., and also the mining things and all the new inventory and cargo with mining specifically and generalized cargo space. It excites me. It makes me interested. Is there going to be work done on the Expanse? Are they going to hint at more? Are they going to even launch the damn ship finally? Excuse my language. I'm curious, very curious. I think at the very least, we're going to see the jettison containers, and we're going to see the ship tractor beams coming into 3.19 and beyond. I have not had a chance to get into 3.19 BTU, by the way. Every time I keep trying to go in, it seems like I'm missing the window. There's a small window where the floor is on, where the floor is out. I've had some friends who have shared some screenshots of the floor in the PTU, showing where the new Mirai is going to be, and it is extremely small. It's going to be probably a single sheet ship. We're thinking it's going to be a fighter based on how it's presented and aggressiveness, but it is interesting to see that it is a completely different ship than MISC. Once again, this curated article that was posted out of an old jump point on the StarCitizen's main website is about MISC. There going to be a focus on the opening day of Fleet Week this year, and yeah, it's really interesting. So shifting gears a little bit away from this story, I also noticed that there in the video that's introducing Fleet Week this year, there is light shows that are showing the Javelin and it look like the Bengal. There's a good reason for that. Capitals of that size are not able to go into true Atmo. And I've heard one person point out to me that why is the Javelin not just put in the Atmo? It was at Orison. Yes, it was. But there's a very specific dynamic going on at Orison. Orison is a high altitude location on a gas giant. The gravity is extremely different there. So there is high gravity, but it's much, much, much deeper in those clouds.
there is basically no ground to stand on in Orison. And what's going on is the Javelin is able to get into that high atmo area just enough to get to the Augusta Dunlow spaceport and dock. And as I've said before, it is a very interesting factor because it also opens the door of question marks of, well, can the Hull D and Hull E do the same trick? And the answer is we don't know. We really haven't until the ships are literally being put into the test universe and we can really finally see them in all their glory, whenever that is. We have no idea because different ships have different pressure tolerances. For example, the Starfarers have a pretty decent pressure tolerance. The cab of an Endeavor has ridiculously good pressure intenses because these science ships and ships that are designed to be anywhere near a mining are very good at handling pressures. Even some combat ships do not have as good ability to handle the pressures that these ships can. So eventually, the theory is that some ships will actually be able to dip into those clouds deeper, where combat ships that are not necessarily the most constructed. I'm going to pick on the Buccaneer for a minute. A pair of Buccaneers chasing after a Starfarer should not be able to catch up to it. They should be falling apart amongst them. At the very least, have to pull up and pull out after they start seeing the wings fall apart or something from the pressure differentials. Um, and that's not to say the Starfarer won't have any damage, but anyway, I digress. So Hull D, Hull E will have different pressure differentials and gravity needs and thruster layouts than a massive military class ship that's also built for sciences as well. The Javelin is a modular class ship that when it reached civilian service, it had interesting the up on the officer country deck, the highest deck, they have 6 modular rooms on there if they're sticking to how it was originally presented in the concept sale. And even as a science station on the bridge. It has been kind of retrofitted for the needs of cartography and sciences when it reached the civilian world. So yes, it can still do military stuff, but it can also happen to do other interesting things. And we'll see if it has any of that modularity to speak of, but at the very least, it should have some of those elements and it should be able to handle some interesting things. The Javelin that is actually part of Fleet Week, though, is a military Javelin. So I'm sure there's got to be a difference, but maybe both ships have that same capability. We'll see. So, long story made short, Orison is going to be an interesting place, even if it just means that javelins can dock there. And in other planets, especially in at least Stanton, there is no other planetary landing location with that capability, which means that orgs with larger ships may want to live out of Orison. And if even the Hull D or ideally the Hull E can do the same trick, they definitely will want to live out of Orison, even if it costs a tremendous amount of fuel to be able to get in and out of Atmo. It is basically your safe harbor, your hard dock, so to speak, where you can long-term store those type of vessels. Just some food for thought. Now, what am I excited for Fleet Week? Yeah, I'll throw that in too, I guess. With Fleet Week, I think some of the biggest stuff that I really want to see is the Liberator, the Liberator, the Liberator. I'd love to see some progress at the very least on that ship. It is one of those ships that I think we really need. And to me, being able to at least start seeing serious work being done on the Liberator. I would love to see a static Liberator sitting on the sales floor, dare I say it, is a sign that Pyro is closer. Liberator was originally envisioned to be used to get players with smaller ships even having a chance to get to Pyro. This a 2-bed ship. It is a ship with the only nuanced technology on board that's really a hindrance is they have to implement PDS technology, and the pads do not have full carrier, rearm, refit, repair capabilities. So they don't have to have like a whole new process in place for those type of things. They just need simple pads. Whatever they use for the 890, they can use for that. They can use for the Liberator. So my only nervous tick here is basically, will they hold back the Liberator for a very long time if the PDSs are nowhere near ready? And unfortunately, it's probably true. Um, John Crew said that they added the two PDSs, but was one on the top and one on the bottom. It's hard to see the one on the bottom unless you've were working with the spinning model on the website. Uh, they said that basically the two PDSs are used because they didn't want like a retaliator to come up and just sucker punch a liberator with a whole bunch of people on board. They wanted it to be a bit of a challenge to take down this ship and give it a chance to basically, well, you need to have a coordinated attack to take one down. And it brings up an interesting point. When those PDSs run out of ammo, how quickly will they run out of ammo? So I think that's one of the other interesting things is just basically, will the PDS be something that's real, be something that's able to be installed on that Liberator, so we can have a pair of them running. The turret matters less to me than being able to just basically have those PDSs. The ships on board, having like a pair of Hornets on board. I'm not even going to say Super Hornets, and even like a Pisces with with four size one guns on it or something, hopping off the front of the ship. Um, that's quite an armament. It seems to me that the bigger, scarier thing for the lib is going to be the bigger stuff, like the size 9 torps from your eclipses, from your retaliators. Just kind of bam, 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 and it just knocks the ship's ability to quantum out or something like that. Now everybody's just stuck there. That's a problem. So yeah, I think the PDSs are the most interesting thing. And once again, I think that the risk of it being Apollo'd is pretty high. Like the ship is basically done, but it's being forever stalled because it doesn't have the drone capacity. And speaking of that, there's a quite a lot of rumors running around right now. Master mode testing is one of the rumors I'm hearing. Uh, Drone testing is another thing that I'm hearing about, and that's not even a rumor. That's listed in the monthly reports talking about working about pilots operating remote technology on the ships. So that means drones. Um, or basically, if you're reading between the lines, and the other really fun thing is these mini quantum boosts, as also another rumor I'm hearing. There is a slew of new technologies that I really want to get my hands on and really test out and see how they turn out coming down the line. And even if, let's just pick master modes as like this most simple thing. Even master modes would make a tremendous difference if we could at least get one or two ships in the game that are bound to the master mode's new tech, that we can finally see just how weakened they are when they're not having their shields up, and how much faster they go, etc. when that's the case, and how much slower they go when they kick on their shields, go into full combat, stance, and really see how that gameplay works. And I'm one of those kind of people that'll jump on PTU and keep asking around until somebody will finally break out one of the ships that's bound to this Master Mode's tech as well, and just do a couple sparrings with that person off one of the stations, etc. Get out to a good distance and just start wailing on each other and see how it feels, because I think that that's a major kind of decision point for anybody looking to buy or pick up in game, or I'm not going to say rent, but pick up in game different combat ships. At any point when master modes finally get sprung on us, it could make the entire meta of the game change, and it probably will. For example, turreted multi-crew ships are going to get massive buffs, and I'm not just speculating on that. The devs literally said they want those ships to do more damage and be able to do their job of swatting, in their words, swatting away smaller ships like the light fighters and medium fighters, um, and vice versa. We're going to see these lighter craft being able to basically just sprint away from the fight. Um, how effectively? If they're biting off more than they can chew, can they use their mobility and agility to be able to get away and just basically, it's okay that they can't defeat this bigger ship because they don't have to fight it ever. Is that going to be the way it is? It seems to be the hint I'm getting is like that. For starters, in the future, it's going to cost money to repair armor, repair hull, etc. It's going to take material at the very least, even if you're doing it yourself. So a bigger ship that's not necessarily destroyed but its cargo's intact, itself's intact, its fuel is not lost. It's still not going to want to take a torp to the face. It's still not going to want to deal with a size 7 gun on an Ares Inferno, popping a few shots off at it if necessary. These larger ships are not going to want to fight things they don't have to fight, especially the larger and larger the ship gets. When you do run up against something with armor that has any kind of speed and mobility more than you, it presents like interesting skirmish, kind of attrition attacks, especially in like places where you're operating off the known path. A carrack that's out exploring, how much can you harass it with a smaller ship, especially a smaller ship that happens to be packing a larger size weapon? Or will they be able to effectively, well, swat you away, or scare you away enough where they can't take you out, but you certainly can't stay. So yeah, I mean, there's like this weird dynamic I really want to explore between large ships, specifically, and some of the small ships that are equipped with like, you know, okay, I'm gonna say it, punch above their weight class type weapon systems. But yeah, so that's kind of the exciting stuff this year for me. Unfortunately, 99.9% chance I won't be able to make it to CitizenCon. I'm hoping to make it out to the New Jersey meetup in the next couple months. So if I run into any of you there, it's great. You know, please say hello. I'll chat your ear off anyway. Uh, and I would say that the more exciting things to me are the in-game type technologies that are coming out and the larger events in game, particularly this year, especially because we're seeing a lot of momentum. I've gone to a couple meetups. I've gone to a studio tour, and I can tell you, like, the excitement of those is more of the years where there's not a lot going on in game. To be able to turn back to the community and really and really get invigorated by it. But I'm more interested in spending a lot more time in game, spending a lot more time in the PU, in the PTU, and the uh, uh, multiple types of PTUs, the ones we've even had. The I'm loving this revision cycle of bouncing through the 3.18.1.2 now into 3.19 PTU. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm loving. I hope to see this cadence stick together as long as possible. And to be honest, although I wish you all who make it out to CitizenCon the best, I'm almost dreading it because every year I've noticed that as soon as CitizenCon comes near, for those who are newer to the community, CitizenCon's like an in-person meetup. Thousands of players show up and they may be able to meet the devs. There's all these presentations. You can tune in online if you don't go, and there's wonderful high definition video streaming on the Star Citizen official Twitch and YouTube. And some years they've even sold like super HD things. And usually they give out goodies to the community, both in person and also, of course, in game goodies for all the players that are part of the community. So if you don't already have an account, please remember to sign up. I get nothing from it unless you use my referral code. But at the very least, no matter what you do, be sure to have an account with Star Citizen because once in a while they give you freebies. And they're actually quite nice most of the time. Even just a weapon with a nice skin, that's worth a few thousand UEC every time you have a wipe. You got that to use every time. Anyway, um, I would say that CitizenCon's going to slow down development. So it feels like they're in this race to the wall, so to speak, to have a lot to show, both at Fleet Week and then rolling right into CitizenCon ramp up. Uh, I would say that that seems to be like they're going to be ramping up for that very very soon. So I hope to see more and more progress in that span, and also see what's going on with Squadron 42. For those who have been with me for a while, I have mixed feelings about Squadron 42. I wish there was more of a 50-50 balance between development for Squadron 42 and the PU slash PTU slash everything, the iterations of the testing and the live server production. Um, but I'm probably never going to get my wish. So I hope to see Squadron 42 have a nice successful out the door and see the community grow exponentially. And we can all kind of have a good time and really see a even more alive verse. And hopefully by that point, we will see more resources committed to the PU after a successful Squadron 42 launch of the part one of the story. So yeah, I've got a lot of feelings. I'm curious to see what we're going to see, both in game and out of game events. And things are certainly heating up this year. Thank you all for sticking around. Have a wonderful night. Fly safe as always.